Aria, what's going on, man? How are you?
It's good to see you.
Yeah, I haven't seen you in a while. It's always on WhatsApp. We're chatting, right?
We're upgrading. We're going. It's a little bit like dating online, right? We start with the WhatsApp. Now we're on the video. Next, we'll be meeting online. Then we'll move
That's
in together.
yeah, right. That's 2020. Hey, well, I'll see you. When what we were texting about, I'll see you this summer in Manchester, hopefully, or London.
Exactly.
That'll be fun, man. What's going on in your world? What's got you excited lately?
I think a big theme right now for me is exploration,
Yeah.
and so really tapping into that and seeing in what parts of my life can I act from a place of exploration. So travel's huge right now. So like we're talking about, I'm now working from different locations. I'm in Costa Rica right now. I'll be going on to LA afterwards, then Bali, and really just taking that time to keep an open mind, keep an open heart, and
Mm.
all of the lessons that come with it.
Yeah. Exploration. That's exciting. To me, when I hear exploration, kind of like knowing a little bit about you, I think about trying to, chase passions, pique your curiosity. What's kind of behind, explorations? And also, where are you now? You said Costa Rica? Awesome.
So the way I look at life is continually flowing, and then a trap that we fall into that we try and hold on to the present moment, or we have a fixed idea of what a reality should be like or where we should be going. And as soon as anything becomes too static, it dies. Like the blood in our bloodstream has to flow. If a river doesn't flow, then it'll stagnate. And so part of this for me is flowing with life, and different opportunities are arising, and rather than saying no, I'm much more tapping into let's say yes, let's use my values to guide me, and then let's just see where it takes me.
Saying yes. Yes is just, I mean, just the acoustics of the word are nicer than no. I mean, yes is just a beautiful word.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's really cool. And it's such a dichotomy because I've been trying to prioritize in my life. So I'm trying to
Mm-hmm.
say no more in some areas, but I'm trying to say yes more. And I love the it's just like everything else in life, right? It's a balance.
Yeah.
And
So what are the things you're saying yes to, and what are the things you're saying no to right now?
good question. So from a categorical standpoint, they're kind of the same things. They're things to do, how I'm spending my time, right? But I'm trying to say no if they don't align with my values and priorities, which is really, uh, you know, it's funny when people say, well, let me go back to this. I just finished a book. I read it for the second time called Thinking in Systems. And
Mm-hmm.
if you haven't read it, just when they say systems, you are a system as a human being. Your computer that you're looking into is a system. The house you're in has a plumbing system, an electrical system. These systems integrate with each other, right? Like, there's systems everywhere. That the world is made up of systems that have inflows and outflows. And it talked about the goal of a system is not its stated goal, but the most likely outcome of its actions. So I used to say I had these priorities and values, and then you look at what I do, and I didn't follow those priorities and values. So those really weren't my goals, my priorities and values. So I spent a lot of time, especially beginning of the year, time to reflect, to really gain clarity and focus on what some of those things are. And then trying to make decisions based on them, right? So you talked about travel. I think I love sports. And I think sport is a great way for me to express myself and challenge myself. So you said you're in Costa Rica. We went opposite directions. I'm up in Canada, and I'm taking up skiing. So I went from renting skis for 2 days a winter and 2 days a year really to right. We got a season pass. I bought all the gear. So skiing and days I don't feel like skiing, rock climbing. So sports that like they're like fun, they're playful. They're outdoors. They're like those are things I'm trying to say yes to. Things I'm trying to say no to is, like unnecessary meetings. I'm not answering emails, even sometimes from clients, just unless I can really bring value and push the conversation further. That kind of stuff. Does that? I don't know if that makes sense, but
Absolutely. Our actions today create the effects tomorrow. And there's so many people, and far too often do we feel like we're just a boat which is being taken in the direction of the wind. And so I think that's why it's crucial to have vision, to know what direction that you're heading in, to know
yeah,
actually what would a life that I love look like? What would that involve? What would I be doing on a daily basis? How would I be feeling? Who would be around me? What activities would I be doing? But
yeah,
unless we take that time to pause and reflect and be intentional, then we'll end up living someone else's life, because society is so strong. That's another system, and it has a strong code of conduct and strong principles and strong ideas and expectations. And unless we're aware of our own choices consciously, then we'll end up becoming a puppet to the master of society.
yeah. You said that beautifully. Isn't it interesting, at least for me, how you can understand something but not realize it and live like a realization of it? I think what you're saying, a lot of people are going to resonate with, but
Mm.
I can tell you, I mean, we've had these discussions. This is kind of like what I study in with as much time as I can. But realizing it, I remember I felt a little bit rushed yesterday. So yesterday, I woke up, hit the gym in the morning, great work day, ended work a little bit early like I intended so I can get a lot of rock climbing in. And I was
Mm.
climbing, okay, on the wall, and I remember thinking about what I need to do after climbing. So
Mm.
like the reason I resonate with sport is it helps me get in the zone more than anything else. For me, it's sport and learning. And I remember that, and, like, so, when I came down off the wall, like, I went over, I sat and was drinking water for a second, realizing, like, this is my dream, right? I was bouldering. Bouldering's a completely solo sport, right? Like, me bouldering, um, by myself is literally if I was a millionaire, if a 100 millionaire, right? If I had everything I want in the world, that's what want to do right in this moment. And, like, I just had, like, a rush of gratitude come over me, and I was like, "Why aren't you just, like, focusing on it?" And it led me down to think this concept about that, like, we really aren't, I don't wanna say we're not deserving of it, but anything that, like, we want in our life, we need to consistently work for, and that's not a negative thing, that's actually a beautiful thing because, there's that emotional acceleration when you do get it, that feels great. But, it's like it's something like, I practice, things I think are gonna help with living in the moment and awareness, and still, it escapes me, all the time, right? So, it's really interesting. So that's really what I'm working towards as far as saying yes and no, things that are just gonna help me be more aware and more, in that moment.
Well, a few things come to mind. One is that the mind has this phenomenal ability to build time travel. Like it can draw us into the past and ruminate on what happened, and it can propel us into the future
Yeah.
and imagine multiple scenarios. And in science, they call it stimulus independent thought. So essentially, we're thinking about something other than what we're doing. And there was a fascinating study from Harvard that showed, on average, during everyday activities, people's mind tend to wander 46.9% of the time. So 47% of the time, the mind is pulling us out of the present moment.
Hmm.
When we look at the effects of that, we tend to be less happy whenever we're thinking about something other than what we're doing, even if we're doing something unpleasurable like commuting or doing the dishes. And then there's even the knock-on effect in terms of focus, because whenever you look at what is going to generate long-term success is focus. Focus generates success. It's focus which leads to deep, meaningful relationships. It's focus which will propel your business. It's focus which will allow you to progress and evolve and improve.
I love that. I always used to hear, and I say, focus wins.
Focus wins.
Focus
Completely.
wins.
And then that kind of ties into another point, which is a lot of the time we end up placing our attention on the outcome and we forget about the process. So even in rock climbing, it could be, I'm trying to get to the top of the wall or the mountain or the cliff, whatever it might be. But how you do it is actually everything. You could do it while being distracted, and you could do it at the same time, or it might take you a little bit longer. But I can guarantee it'll be far less enjoyable. And there's a rock climbing pioneer who was called Royal Robbins. I don't know if you came across him, but he would scale incredible feats in Yosemite. But the difference with him was that he wanted to preserve the natural landscape of the mountain without hammering pins into it. And he had this quote, which I love, which is, getting to the top is nothing. The way you do it is everything. And I think a lot of the time people focus on the action, but they forget the how. Even with your partner, she can be talking to you or he can be talking to you, and you can say, yeah, yes, my love, yeah. But if you're not fully present and you're not focused, it's going to have a radically different impact on the person than if you're engaged and you're listening and saying, yes, my love, yes, yes. Like, people can tell how you do something, in my book, in a way is infinitely more important than focusing on where that's going to take you.
Yeah, and your experience is so much greater. I mean, you
What's
live
life
it so much
about?
more. Yeah,
Yeah,
I mean, that's the
experience.
difference to me between being awake and asleep, right? It's funny, these we're talking about that, and your environment, as Aria, your environment dictates a lot of your behavior. That's the reason I have this podcast. For people that
Mm.
don't know, we have this talk once a month, you and I. But the fact that we're saying, hey, it's on the calendar, we're gonna record it. It just it's not that we're not gonna have that conversation outside of it. It's just like it gives us all the more reason to just lock in. There's a reason my phone's back there charging, right? The only thing I have here is an empty notebook to write, and focus. Um, for those people that don't know you, because we jumped into it like we always do you mind giving a little bit of an intro about your background, what you do, your book, that kind of stuff?
So in terms of career, I'm a high performance psychologist. So I
Hmm.
work with individuals who are often at the top of their game professionally, and it could be in the creative industries, in in business and finance, and generally they are, to some extent, masters of the universe, or they're performing extremely well. But a few things have begun to happen. Despite achieving material success and status and everything that society says you should strive for, they could still be experiencing fears or self-doubts or anxieties,
Hmm.
or have moments of feeling low or like there's a void. Or they'll find that their mind can't switch off. Working isn't an issue, but then transitioning into time with the family or with their partner is problematic. Or their mind is constantly making comparisons, despite, by external metrics, the indication of success. The mind is continually saying, you've not done enough, you've not achieved enough, you're not there yet. Other people are doing this quicker, faster, better. What's wrong with you? And that feeling of disappointment in themselves.
Hmm.
Or they've, again, achieved something, but it's just been incredibly underwhelming. And then
Yeah.
they've lost that sense of balance, where the relationships are suffering, or they've lost intimacy with their partner, or they're not the parent that they want to be, or their lives have become so narrow that it's purely consumed by work, and there's nothing outside of that to refill their tank. And so I work primarily on developing self-awareness and emotional resilience, how you you can learn to better understand your own psychology and how your own thoughts and emotions impact your actions. So that irrespective of what life throws at you, rather than reacting from a place of emotion and pain, you can act with wisdom and objectivity and compassion.
Yeah. That's so I'm on page 2 of notes already. I just love it. Um, so self-awareness is the center.
Mm.
That's what it seems even to these people who are, high status, high performance. And what's I'm not asking this in a way of checking you, but what makes you feel compelled to support people and that you are in a position to support people? And my style. I'm more of a casual practitioner than a formal student. And I know you're the beautiful thing about you is you're both, right? You're Dr. Aria for those who don't know. And but then you've also done a lot of inner work. Tell me a little bit about both of those, how they help and relate to, this career that you've created for yourself.
So from an external point of view, I did my undergrad degree in psychology, and then I worked clinically, and then I did my doctorate in clinical psychology at UCL in London. And I've been running my own private practice for a couple of years now. And then around that, mindfulness has been a big focus for me. So spending time with Thich Nhat Hanh, who has now passed both an incredible Zen master, or I developed the first mindfulness groups at 4 different universities and developed mindfulness courses for the NHS. But I would say the most impactful part of the journey has been the internal one. It's been, I think, what distinguishes me from other people is that I truly do walk the walk. And it almost taps back into that principle that you can only transform someone to the extent that you have been transformed, or you can only support the transformation of, would be a better way of putting it. And
Yeah, you got to
so,
speak from experience.
absolutely, speak from experience and having come through the other end and made the changes. Because I love science, and most of my approaches are science-based. And at the same time, I won't recommend anything that I haven't used and tried and tested and seen the effects of, because I need to have mind faith and heart faith in what I'm telling someone else, because there's a lot at stake. It's the quality of your life, it's your career, it's your partner, it's your family, it's everything that you hold dear. And so for me, there's been moments of intense, like most people, intense pain and suffering and loss, and having navigated through that and grown and evolved through it, through the principles I apply, has probably been the greatest evidence for this being the path which is right for me.
Gives you that confidence. Because
It's,
I was just about to ask you something. So you said mind faith and heart faith. I recently had a guest on the podcast, Adam Quinney. Did you ever connect with Tony Benici when I connected you guys?
I think we emailed, but we haven't spoken yet.
Yeah, Tony introduced me to this guy, Adam. Adam, I'll send you the episode with him. He is a coach as well, and he talks about creating like brain intelligence and then heart intelligence and then soul intelligence. And what you just said lit it up for me, because what I was going to say is I feel when I know something logically, right up here, cool, I know it, right? I'm a logical, analytical, person, got it. When I know something in my heart, I feel like I know that well. Like I can, like you said, like heart faith. I could say like, I don't know why, but this is right for me, right? Like, um, soul is spirit, is definitely something I need to I almost use the word conquer. That would have been a funny word to use there, but, work on. because it, like I admire you, Aria, with the, um, I want to use a powerful word, the conviction and confidence that you have in your root. It's not easy, right? Um, it's like, being a high performance coach is one of those things that is like a fun, sexy like title, right? You know what I mean? And to really like go after it, it almost to me, it's like going after like musician or athlete, like, you got to be all in or all out. And I love that you're all in because, it makes you the great person you are today doing this inner work. I will tell you, Tony, the reason I just knew you and Tony would hit it off. Tony was on here as well. And, he said the number one thing in his life is inner work too. It's very similar to how you said it. So, I really enjoyed that. And so you alluded to mindfulness. Like, what is inner work to you? And I can tell you, what my thought of it is, but I'd love to hear like what's inner work to you, and maybe like specifically like some of the things that you do.
Mhm. Well, the way I define mindfulness in its simplest form is that it's awareness
Awareness.
and becoming aware of what's happening inside of you in relation to your thoughts, your feelings, your emotions, and outside of you in terms of what's happening in reality, as if it's happening to someone else. So there's a sense of space or distance. You're the observer and you're watching what is unfolding.
The seer.
The seer, exactly. The seer, the perceiver, the witness. And I think that's integrally linked to inner work. For me, inner work is bringing what is unconscious into the conscious.
Mm,
So a lot of the time we're running an automatic pilot. We're living our lives, like you were saying earlier, as if we're asleep. We're unaware of what's directing our actions. And so we're continually reacting. Someone says something and we react. And often we get triggered because there's something about what they've said which inflicts hurt within us due to our own previous experiences. The person could say the same thing to someone else and they might feel nothing or they might laugh. And
yeah.
so I think the work is beginning to have like a deep familiarity and understanding and compassion for the way that your mind has been built and the filters which it has created over a number of years, particularly from our childhood, and beginning to dissolve some of those disempowering, dysfunctional, self-defeating filters and have much more clarity of perception. And it really ties back to the Stoics, 2000 years ago. Epictetus said, men are disturbed not by things, but by the principles and notions they form surrounding things. As strange as it sounds, it's often not the actual event which causes the most amount of pain. It's the way that we interpret it. It's the meaning we apply to it, and it's the amount that we then replay that back in our mind. There's the neuroscientist Jill Bolt Taylor, and from her work, the amount of time that it takes for an emotion to flush
Hmm.
through your body is about 90 seconds. So there's a series of chemical events which will occur, which will lead to hormonal changes. And within a minute and a half, that will pass through. Anytime that we're feeling an emotion for longer than that, our neural circuitry is re-stimulating a physiological response. And so through deeper knowing of yourself, through the inner work, it doesn't mean that we won't feel, but it means that we'll be experiencing much more closely to the moment and then able to let go or allow the emotions to flow through us. But also we're able to unhook the triggers which have been holding us back.
Hmm. That's really beautiful. There's a lot of things I want to tap into there. You talked about things relating back to the childhood and limiting beliefs, which are things I'd like to hear about. But one thing is when people say mindfulness, right, they start to think meditation, which is a huge piece of it. I think similar to awareness, I think a lot of people, those words kind of are intertwined. Um, I really have had two significant influences in my life that have affected my inner work. Three, really. First was reading Dr. Joe Dispenza's books. The next was working with a company called Mind Change, who Heather and Kent, they started a beautiful company called Mind Change. I could send you some info on it. It's all about tapping into past memories and overcoming them as a way to, change your neurology, right? And then you ultimately changing what you're creating and manifesting into this world. And then, those were really the two big ones actually. And there's some other influence in my life, but I went from taking my mindfulness time to where 90 to 100% of it was, can I sit quietly and follow the breath, right? The third one, actually, I want to give it credit. It's Sam Harris's app, Waking Up. Um, my best friend Marty, I joined his family iCloud account or whatever because he bought the family pass. Um, and Sam Harris talks about it all the time, that it's like, he talks like through his meditations, he talks the whole time. That could annoy people. It's not, it's not just, try to follow the breath. It's actually doing this work. And some of the things that Mind Change and Dr. Joe Dispenza are talking about is like realizing what habits are going on in your life. What thoughts do you think every single day? Why? Like, what's the root of these? Where are they coming from? Mind Change is much more memory based. Dr. Joe Dispenza is much more limiting belief, like in the present moment base. But I'm finding that this inner work that I'm trying to do is actually like work, like it's awareness, it's and controlling my consciousness on something instead of on everything, which I think is another version, of it. um and I don't know, it's I've found some beauty in it. What's your inner work practice like? Is it, I guess, you don't need to go into like all the details, but is it more trying to like uncover something and work through something mentally? Is it just trying to follow the breath? How's that kind of work
Well,
for
just
you?
to pick up on a few things that you said, one way to think about consciousness is that consciousness is a floodlight, and then attention is the spotlight. So part of the practice is expanding our awareness to be able to be aware of not only what you're saying, but what I'm feeling at the same time. So if I'm ever working with a client, it's important that I listen to what they're saying, of course, but it's as important, if not more, that I'm aware of what's happening within me. Because if I'm not aware of it, it's then going to be directing me and pulling me in subconscious directions, and I'm not going to be as present to be able to deliver to the highest potential. Another thing, you were saying is looking at the difference between meditation or mindfulness, and often these terms are used interchangeably. The way I look at it is meditation is a practice in order to cultivate mindfulness in the way
Hmm.
that I describe it as awareness.
Yeah.
And so it's a integral or fundamental or significant tenet to it, but it's not the only strand, because a lot of time people get caught up in, okay, I want to grow and evolve and perform better,
Sure.
so I'm going to meditate, and it becomes another item to put onto the list, which becomes another pressure. And then it's, oh man, I've not meditated in 3 days. Now they're getting stressed out with the fact that they're not meditating enough. I remember I was in LA, and I was having lunch, and up above there was a yoga studio, and I saw these two cars going, and one had gone in the wrong way and the other had gone all the way around, and they were both fighting for the one spot left. And then it was a male and a female, and she was like pumping her horn and screaming, and he was shouting and swearing, and eventually one of them backed off, and the other one like sped off when there was another spot and parked in. They both got out, grabbed their yoga mats, and met on the stairs to head up to yoga. And I remember thinking, in a way, what is the point in going to a yoga class if we're living our lives from a place of
That is funny. It's like
you see kind of, I'm like, oh, namaste.
yeah, yeah, right. I I told you I have Dan Millman coming on the podcast. I'm actually recording that episode later today. I'm so excited. He's my favorite author. Have you read his book, The Way of the Peaceful Warrior?
Yes, I love that.
So I'm reading it, I don't know, for the 5 billionth time. Um, and obviously trying to prepare. And it's funny. I just an hour ago read this scene where like Socrates, he's the wise man, right? The teacher, the guru in the book. And he works at a service station. This is back in the 60s, and someone comes through and is looking to get gas, right? And it's a group of like people that they recognize from like a meditation class, and like they paint this picture how they clearly like they're mindfulness, like they have peace signs, like all this stuff. And he walks up with the intention to push all their buttons, and they get so frustrated, and as they drive away he's like, keep meditating, it's good for you. And it's so funny because these people were like, they literally said in the book like they were like self-righteous about their spirituality and stuff. And it is funny. You know, I think it's I'd have to see on my phone. I think it's Sam Harris's um Sam Harris's Waking Up app. He has he has a course about spiritual materialism. Let
Mm,
me find it. And I'll tell you, I'm trying to come to grips, with this, but it's something that I've experienced as well, right? Because again, I come from the practitioner side of
mhm.
things versus the student, right? So there's especially towards the beginning of this journey that I'm going on, I felt a little bit like a fraud, like I shouldn't be talking about this or thinking about this. But it's like, no, that's the only way to get to the end goal. And it's all about that. People, like, some people like use like meditation, like, oh, I meditate. And it's like, like, oh, I meditate. Do you? How many minutes do you meditate for? And it's so
Yeah.
funny because that's like the exact opposite. Um,
It can become a badge of honor, and it's what the egoic mind loves, because it's always trying to create its identity and justify its existence and prove its worth. But if we get caught up in that trap, and particularly with spiritual pride, it's one of the most insidious because it's one of the most difficult to spot.
yeah, because
The person, often other people can see it, and it's that feeling of holier than thou, or that they're above or superior, and
right.
you're on your way, and one day you'll get there. And it's incredibly dangerous, because that's when, to tap back into that analogy in the beginning, that's when we become static and we become fixed. And
Hmm.
if you do, from my experience, something's going to come along, the universe will find a way to try and shatter that, because the nature of the universe is constant evolution. Everything is constantly evolving. And so I think that's part of the reason why the Buddhists tap into that beginner's mind, where we're continually growing and evolving and changing and adapting in a way that the seasons don't suddenly just stop and be like, actually, we've done the cycle of seasons. It's now just going to be summer for the rest of the time. Unless you're in Costa Rica, and then it pretty much is summer all
Then
the
it is
time.
summer. Are you surfing there? They have great surf, I hear.
Yeah, well, I just picked up surfing about a month ago when I was in Morocco, and so I'm now continuing that wherever I am. And that's, look, there's so many beautiful analogies. I was out in the sea, and it was just, on the one hand, noticing that life is continually changing.
Yeah.
And it taps back into that Buddhist principle of impermanence. Everything is constantly changing. One wave is different to the next. Everyone is going to be slightly different, and it's ever changing. And if you try and go into surfing with a fixed idea of what the wave will be like, then you're gonna end up underwater. If you're out there thinking, do you know, the wave should not be that way, then you're just going to feel frustrated. But we go through life that way, thinking this is the way that it has to be, this is the way that it should be. And if it's not, then it's unfair. And we end up, in a way, punishing ourselves
Yeah.
through that clash of expectations with reality. And that's what I often say, that any suffering which arises is when your expectations of reality clash with reality. And reality always wins,
Absolutely.
rooted in the real.
I've once heard that happiness equals reality minus expectations.
So more
And
God that created that, very nice, simple happiness equation.
right, yeah, and take that for what it is with a grain of salt, right? I don't think happiness has an equation, but if it did, that's a pretty good one.
Yeah.
Um, Talk to me about, some of your travels. So, well, first of all, like I want to hear about surfing. I talked about surfing's a new sport for you. Is that right?
Yes.
Cool. I talked about how like skiing and rock climbing are things like, so I've rock climbed like in gyms, again, 10 times over the last 20, 30 years. Um, and skiing, 10, probably 25 times, right? Like I find these just as great ways for me to like harness my awareness and focus. But then you have to reflect on it and see what can I pull from that into other areas. Is that kind of why you got into surfing, like as another way to challenge the body, the mind, the spirit? Or do you think it looks cool? Because I think it looks cool.
I had this insight the other day that I'm drawn towards activities which demand my focus.
Yeah.
Where
Yeah.
if you,
Sorry to cut you up. Do you ever go backpacking, like overnight hikes?
yeah, yeah, yeah,
To me, that's number one.
yeah.
That's kind of why I'm getting into rock climbing, because I want to get into like mountaineering. But I
Mhm.
mean, even the way you pack up your tent into your pack, cook your food. I mean, if you're not meticulous, so sorry. That's we'll take a backpacking trip soon.
Okay. That's also a beautiful part of feeling self-sufficient as well. Freestanding. I think that's so.
Powerful.
And with surfing, well, I realize with activities that I'm drawn towards, there are ones which demand my focus. Where if you are distracted, you're going to fall off the board. Or I motorbike, and I'm also aware that it's not the safest sport. So I'm there and I'm present every time I'm on my bike. It's why I got my skydiving license, because you can't be thinking about what you're going to have dinner tonight. You've got to be aware of your altitude and maintaining balance. And in that focus, there is presence, and
Yeah.
there's unadulterated freedom within that presence.
Yeah.
And it's almost tapping into also that sense of flow where you're continually challenging yourself just beyond your comfort zone, but there's immediate feedback on every action
Yeah.
or every change that you make. And there's this melting away of time where everything is just in a way flowing through you. You suddenly realize or appreciate or experience that you are just another part of the universe. You're another part of the wave on the ocean of the universe.
Yeah.
So I'll often then choose activities which will be a gateway for that, whilst also trying to develop my awareness in my everyday life
Mhm.
in order to experience that calm or that ease with life as much as possible.
It's Oh man, I hope that relates to other people. That relates to me a lot, man. I mean, even like, do you know the difference between bouldering and rock climbing? Like bouldering or traditional rock climbing, bouldering is like generally lower. There's a lot of differences, but you're
Yeah,
not attached to anything.
yeah.
I like that too, because like yesterday I got to the point where like I mentioned, for even though I did rock climbing as a way to harness my focus, I still lost focus. But I'm tethered in, so I just let go. So I literally just walked right over to the bouldering wall, because it's not that high, but I'm 18 feet off the ground. You don't want to just lose focus for a second. Like, of course, it's a soft mat under you, because I was doing this at a gym inside. But still, it's a good way to harness that. And I love that you said outside of your comfort zone. So
Mhm.
the skiing is a really big one for me, because I understand the risks as well, right? And there's no reason that I can't take these certain routes or push in certain areas, but it takes that energy and focus. And there's a absolute benefit to the things that do have more risk to them, going fat, trying to like bomb a mountain, right, as fast as you can, or trying to cut between trees. Like it requires that, not just like up here, but to translate into your body and do it. Um, Man, I can't wait to get. I'm gonna try to ski today now. I'm getting excited about it. Um,
And
that's
everyone will
cool.
have a different tolerance for risk. So it's not that someone even has to go to the extreme of skydiving
Yeah,
or getting a motorbike. It could be hiking, or it could be a sport.
yeah.
But I think the key part is that
Could be having a conversation that you've been scared to have, right?
completely, it could be putting yourself out there in work or challenging yourself in a different way. Exactly, it can be in your relationships, it can be in your personal level. But it taps into 2 points which I think are crucial. One is that people often get caught up in trying to find their life purpose, almost like it's a an Easter egg which is being hidden, and
Like a
they're hunting
scavenger hunt.
scavenger hunt, and they just have to find it. Until they find it, they really don't feel like they can be that happy or fulfilled or have meaning in their life. The way that I look at it is that essentially we're on this planet for a finite amount of time, and within that time we have to spend that time. And some things we'll spend it on will be important, and others will be unimportant. Some will be fulfilling, and others less so. Some will bring joy and happiness, others won't. And so I think a more useful question is, what would be a meaningful or an important use of my time today? Even just each person thinking, what would be an important use of my time today? And the more that we can begin to then channel that time into what is important, the more that in a way we'll be living out our purpose. And we'll begin to discover the things which we're passionate about and we're good at. And they might be a hobby, or they might trickle into being a business endeavor.
Yeah,
But the other key part is it's a trial by fire process. We'll never understand our passions or figure out our purpose sitting on the sofa with a bag of Doritos thinking, I wonder what I'd love to do. We have to go out and try it. I've had sports where I've tried them, and yeah, I enjoyed it, but there was nothing to really pull me in. I could have done surfing and hated it. But it's about trying something, experiencing it, and then really following that place of intuition of, does this feel right? Does this feel
yeah.
it's the path for me? And then just seeing where it goes.
So well said. Action is the way versus inaction. And I do want to be clear. I want to be inclusive here, and I know you're supportive of this. It doesn't have to be sport. Aria, we relate on something there. I just find, again, for
Yeah.
me, it's super
Music,
easy.
art,
My
poetry.
brother's a musician. Actually, I've been painting 1 or 2 nights a week, and then I've been writing a blog 1 or 2 mornings a week. Like, again, I did them because that's not like, art, like that's like an expression, that's more artistic. That is not me usually. I found that to be like a beautiful and fun like expression. And again, it's an action. Even, whatever the action is, it needs to be an action. The creative process, the studies about the brain when it's in a creative process, whether, it's doing, writing, creating, whatever, is just so, it's so beautiful and so healthy for the brain. And it's when, it experiences, high levels of serotonin and other things that relate to, good experiences, and then also memories we can reflect on. It's, it's really, that's really, key. um wow. I have like a million questions for you, man. One question that I wanted to ask was about about books, courses, thing. I think I started that wrong. You've mentioned that you've worked with some cool people, some Buddhists, some people that have, some academics. I'd love to hear, just maybe like a story about like an experience with someone that you've worked with, something that like you've got to take with you, because I'm always searching for people to uh, live with. like, like experience life with, learn from, hopefully share motivation or learnings with them. I don't really know. I don't think we've ever talked about some of the experiences that you've had in that realm.
Well, one was whenever I was in Plum Village, which is the monastery where Thich Nhat Hanh lived for a lot of his life, and he said something which stayed with me. He said, "As long as you can feel grateful, you can be happy."
Wow.
And I thought, wow, and it's so true whenever you look at the structure of the mind. Our mind has evolved to focus on the negative and to focus on what's missing, because that's what kept us alive. It was designed to keep us safe. We'd have to keep on looking at, what do I not have? I don't have enough water. I don't have enough food. I don't have enough shelter. To focus on the negative. What if I run out of food? What if I run out of water? What if that rustling in the bushes is a lion? And so we're constantly interpreting our surroundings from a fear-based filter and from fear-based reactivity.
Yep.
Where we are now, we don't have the same physical challenges to our well-being, but we still have inherited the same mind. And so we're always looking at what's missing, what we don't have. It's
We're in a battle with ourselves.
Yeah, the wife that left us, or the career that isn't there, or the money we lost, or whatever it might be. But if we can just begin with awareness to shift our focus to what we do have. Now, I think the key thing with gratitude, though, is it isn't another tick list to get through. Because I often see with people is that they'll externally begin to think, okay, I'm going to have a gratitude journal.
Gratitude journal, right?
3 things I'm grateful for, morning and night. And again, it can either become like another chore, or they lose the spirit of what they're doing. It's just writing it down and they're not really connecting to the feelings. It's not to say that a gratitude journal isn't something which is science-based, because it is, and it's shown to be effective. But it's, from my experience, it's been whenever you slow down and pause and really just take your time to connect to even 1 or 2 different parts, and then to connect to the feelings of that. And another way of approaching is the more that we let go of our expectations of the way that life should be, and the more that we're present, that in a way we take away the obstacles to gratitude, and gratitude will much more naturally begin to seep up into your life. You'll suddenly be walking, and when you're present, suddenly you're like, oh, do you know what? I love this view, or I love the feeling of the sunshine on my face, or
it's overwhelming.
Dinner, and when you're present, you're like, do you know, oh, I'm so grateful for this meal that I have, and it'll naturally then go into your life. What are your thoughts on that?
I love it. Like the 2 words of not my year, my decade, man, are awareness and gratitude. And there's a lot behind those. I think they're very overused words. They're very vague words. But in the terms of gratitude, so the title of this podcast is Happiness, Life's Ultimate Discipline. And what I mean behind that is that in every moment, you have a choice. And you have a choice whether to look at the bright side of things or not. And the analogy, I believe I've used it on here before, is taking a cold shower. There's a bunch of science behind the importance of taking a cold shower, how it helps with your cardiovascular system, inflammation, all these things. But what it does to your psyche and your mental is astronomical, and it outweighs any of the physical benefits. It's that when you get in that shower, it's cold, it's uncomfortable, it's not a nice, cozy, warm shower, right? All you can do is catch your breath if you're lucky and survive. But then it teaches you to function, right? Okay, you can take a shower, you can clean your body, your hair while showering, and that's what you learn to do under stress and in a high stress environment. And then after about 60 to 90 seconds, something really interesting happens. The water feels a little warm, and you feel awake, you feel alive, you feel an energy rush like you couldn't imagine, and you start to thrive. And all that's happened in your brain by staying in there and not getting out is that you've entered this ultimate space of gratitude where it is still cold and uncomfortable, but you're looking at the fact that your blood is rushing. It's got you awake, and your skin gets like a little red, which is healthy. It means there's lots of blood flow going on. And it's like a practice of gratitude. And relating it to the title of the podcast, it's that the discipline of being grateful moment to moment is the goal of life, right? And that leads towards lasting peace and happiness. I think habits, gratitude journal, great ways to start. You need everything that you need to work on. It needs to start with forced, I think. Force writing down what you're grateful for, and you'll start to realize, like, wow, like I really, really am grateful for it. Like, for example, I was skiing the other day. I'm like, I have healthy, strong, flexible legs. Like, this wouldn't even be an option if I didn't have that. And of course, that's like something, yeah, yes, most people have it. A lot of people don't, or a lot of people might have legs and they can't function, or they're not strong, or, their knees aren't good, whatever. Like, whatever you are, you got to be, grateful for in that moment. And I'm so glad you said that, because like, I think that's a good place to wrap this up, because that is what it's all about. I'm glad I asked your biggest takeaway, and it was, if you could be grateful, you could be happy, and that's what it's all about to me. Before we wrap it up here, do you have any last thing that you want to say?
Just to add on to that, the gratitude or appreciation stems from acceptance. And naturally, it's easier to accept the present moment whenever it's pleasant. But the reality is, there are often intense moments of hardship and pain and suffering. And there's events which unfold in the world that people view as being horrific. And there's that sense of injustice which arises. And it's
Mm-hmm.
not to negate that or overlook it, or to try and see with Pollyanna rose-tinted glasses, but it's seeing that reality is unfolding as it must. And we have a choice. We can either accept it, and now acceptance doesn't mean agreeing with it, and it doesn't mean doing nothing, but we can either see that it's happening and then move on or move with that, or we can try and reject it. And a lot of people try and either psychologically reject something, which is noticed when your mind says this shouldn't be happening, or emotionally the pain comes up and they try and deny it or put it in a box and they try and escape it.
Mm-hmm.
Which also, it just leads to more suffering in the long term too. And part of it is what I call the yes and, seeing that yes, this can be a difficult time, and yes, this is the situation which I didn't want or expect, and I will get through this, and I can cope through this, and all will be well. And this might be a few pages on the chapter of my life, but it's not the end of the story. Because from what I've seen, our greatest source of suffering can turn into our greatest source of strength and courage and compassion and growth.
It
And
has to.
so the way the universe evolves. And so whatever anyone's going through, for me, it's recognizing that pain, and also seeing that this too shall pass, this will change, and that there will be more peace and joy and beauty in your life.
Well, that was a gift to me and a gift to everyone else, Dr. Aria. Thank you so much for hopping on, and I hope everyone enjoyed this. I'll post up about this, and I'll tag you in it so everyone can figure out exactly how to go learn about the great things you're doing. I want to connect with you on it, because I want to figure out how I can become a student of yours as well. So thank you so much for hopping on, and we'll sign off with that.
Thanks, Sean.